Do you mind moving a little bit to your right?
They must find a way out of it all. There might be some simpler way, some less laborious way, she sighed.
Not particularly great.
When she looked in the glass and saw her hair grey, her cheeks sunk, at 50, she thought, possibly she might have managed things better.
To explore myself and
Her husband, money,
my feelings.
his books. But for her own part she would never for a single second regret her decision, evade difficulties, or slur over duties. She was now formidable to behold, and it was only in silence.
I shatter everything around me,
Looking up from their plates, after she had spoken
including myself.
so severely about Charles Tansley,
And
that her daughters, Prue, Nancy, Rose,
this is just the way it is. Like the sky is blue.
could sport with infidel ideas which they had brewed for themselves of a life different from hers, in Paris, perhaps, a wilder life, not always taking care of some man or other, for there was in all their minds a mute questioning of deference and chivalry, of the Bank of England and the Indian Empire, of ringed fingers and lace, though to them all there was something in this of the essence of beauty, which called out the manliness in their girlish hearts, and made them, as they sat at table beneath their mother's eyes, honor her strange severity, her extreme courtesy, like a queen's raising from the mud to wash a beggar's dirty foot.
There is no glass which is blue. They are either white, green, or another color, but never blue.
When she admonished them so very severely about that wretched atheist who had chased them, or, speaking accurately, been invited to stay with them, in the Isle of Skye.
Glass is
There'll be no landing at the lighthouse tomorrow,
a tool
said Charles Tansley,
that humanity created
clapping his hands together as
and can also destroy.
he stood at the window with her husband. Surely, he had said enough.
I mean, yeah,
She wished they would both leave her and James alone and go on talking.
I don't have any particular connection with glass.
All humps and hollows. He couldn't play cricket. He poked. He shuffled. He was a sarcastic brute,
Everyone else seems
Andrew said.
like they're made out of glass to me.
They knew what he liked best,
Like they are this
to be
immaculate figures that are perfect
forever walking up and down,
the way they are.
up and down,
Look,
with Mr. Ramsay,
but
and saying who had won this,
you can see through them almost immediately.
who had won that,
They are
who was a first-rate man at
superficial
Latin Vesses, who was brilliant but I think
and
fundamentally unsound,
I
who was undoubtedly the ablest fellow in Balliol,
know it's not
who had buried
true,
his light temporarily at Bristol or Bedford,
but of course everything is subjective.
but was bound to be heard of later when his Prolegomena, of which Mr. Tansley had the first pages in proof with him if Mr. Ramsay
What I like to do with them sometimes, with these glass figures all around me,
would like to see them,
is shatter them in a million pieces
to some brown
because they don't deserve to look that beautiful
of mathematics
and have this
or philosophy saw the light of day.
perfection around them. Why
That was what they
I personally
talked about.
have always been shattered
She liked
in some way.
Charles Tansley, she thought, suddenly.
And who likes to look at a figure that's broken?
She liked his laugh. She liked him for
I don't even like to look at myself that way.
being so angry with Paul and Mintu. She liked his awkwardness. There was a lot in that
It's a nice day outside today.
young man after all.
And yet so many people outside
And Lily, she thought,
enjoying the weather.
putting her napkin beside her plate.
And
She always has some joke of her own.
I
One need never bother about Lily.
Can't do that.
Beside her plate.
I don't understand how they do that.
She always has some joke of her own.
How they can just enjoy.
One need never bother about Lily. She waited. She tucked her napkin under the edge of her plate. Well, were they done now? No, that story had led to another story. Her husband was in great spirits tonight. And wishing, she supposed,
once you shatter someone,
to make it all right
or
with old Augustus after that scene about the soup,
you feel like shattering someone, it's almost always
had drawn him in.
permanent.
They were telling
You destroyed
stories about someone they had
the
both known at college.
person.
She looked at the window in which
You severed your connection with them. And
the candle flames burnt brighter now that the panes were black.
can never be undone.
And looking at that outside, the voices came to her very strangely, as if
It will be broken forever
they were voices at a
and will never be.
service in a cathedral. For she did not listen to the words.
Words cannot be undone,
The sudden bursts of laughter and then one voice.
and so can
Mintus, speaking alone,
breaking stuff not be undone.
reminded her of men and boys crying out the Latin words of a service in some Roman Catholic cathedral. She waited. Her husband spoke.
I'm not the best person to be around, I guess.
He was repeating something, and she knew it was poetry from the
Because people see
rhythm and the ring of exultation,
how
and melancholy in his voice.
shattered I am, I think.
Come out and climb the garden path, Luriana Lurali.
And they don't want to deal with that because they might cut themselves at the last.
Not that she did in fact run or hurry, she went indeed rather slowly. She felt rather inclined
So
just for a moment to stand still after all that chatter,
if there's no one willing
and pick out one particular thing,
to put me back together
the thing that mattered,
in some non-perfect fashion,
to detach it,
then
separate it off,
entropy will win, and
clean it of all the
I will
emotions and odds
return to sand in the end,
and ends of things.
scattered around the earth
And so hold it before her,
with tiny pieces everywhere,
and bring it to the tribunal where,
like sand. People don't
ranged about in conclave,
give attention to the single grain,
sat the judges she had set up to decide these things.
but only to the whole.
Is it good? Is it bad? Is it right or wrong?
And so they won't care about me anymore.
Where are we all going to, and so on. So she righted herself after the shock of the event.
Are you made of glass?
And quite unconsciously and incongruously, used the branches of the elm trees outside to help her to stabilize her position. Her world was changing, they were still. The event had given her a sense of movement. All must be in order. She must get that right and that right, she thought, insensibly approving of the dignity of the tree's stillness. Hi, I'm Wera, and now again of the soup head up would rise, like the beak of a ship up a wave, of the elm branches as the wind raised them. For it was windy. She stood a moment to look out. It was windy, so that the leaves now and then brushed open a star, and the stars themselves seemed to be shaking and darting light and trying to flash out between the edges of the leaves.